Hello and welcome to my basement of what used to be the Museum of Music Technology in New Zealand. Everything is in my basement here, as you can see, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take you through a journey of the history of drum machines, starting from the beginning and all the way up to the present day. Let's just take a walk through without tripping over everything. Where do we begin? Well, we began really with the Wurlitzer Sideman, which is a mechanical unit. And that was soon replaced by this device here, known as the Seeberg Rhythm Prince. This is the portable version. The reason you can tell that is because one, it's got a handle on it, and two, on the back of it says PRP in the serial number. And if you open it up, you can see the mechanical parts of it here. And this is way ahead of its time, but it's basically a smaller version of the Wurlitzer Sideman. Unfortunately, this unit, like so many of this generation, is no longer working. And what happened after that? We'll keep walking over here. Korg brought out the Danke Matic series. This one is it's actually a Univox. This is a Danke Matic D20, complete with speaker. At the same time in Japan, a company called Acetone brought out several units based on transistor technology, and here's one here, very rare FR600 model, which came out around about 1980. It was pretty much the last Acetone they brought out. It was actually made for Multivox. Just going back in time slightly, this is a very rare unit. This is the Danke Matic D11. Let's have a listen. Wonderful, isn't it? And what happened then? They kept making preset units all the way through the 70s. There's a Korg one here. You've got another rare Univox, Eco Rhythmaker, even Russian units like this one. More rare units at the back here. Here's the book on rhythm machines, which tells you the whole story about them, the rise and fall of the presets. This device here, Rhythm Aid, no idea what it actually does, and my technician pretty much gave up on it when he saw it. He had no idea what to do with it. Another Russian unit here, the Korg Ski, basically a rip-off of Korg, but done by the Russians, made by a company called Rutum. And some kit units. Here's a Practical Electronics rhythm generator, which became known as the Watford rhythm generator. This is the second Watford device that came out. Originally these were both kits and Practical Electronics. Here's another kit which, believe it or not, actually works. And a couple of kits made by a company called Amtron. Well, people got fed up with those and they wanted a program unit, drum machine patterns instead of using all the preset ones. So Roland came out with this CR78, which not only had presets, it also had 4 programmable patterns that could be used. It featured people like Phil Collins, Roxy Music and others. Unfortunately my one is literally just given up the ghost. Here's one similar. This is a Gizman. Let's have a listen to that one. And you could use a pedal to start and stop it, also use fill-ins as well. So even when these programmable units were just coming to the fore, they were still producing these old preset pattern only, but they didn't sell very well. Let's go back in time, following the wires. Forward in time, Roland brought out this little unit here, Boss Dr. Rhythm DR55, around about 1979. Very basic programmable unit. Pi, they just brought out the Pi programmable drum set around about the same time, which just had 2 patterns that could be used. They were very tinny sounding instrument sounds, This device here, the Boss Dr. Rhythm, was basically the beginning of it all. It was really, they actually sounded like drums, and they could be used by The Cure and various other bands in the early days. And then we go forward to this, probably the best programmable unit that came out, the Linn Mark 1. Let's have a listen to that. You can see all the drums here. Lack of cymbals on this unit, so Linn, about a year or so later, came out with this replacement, the Linn drum. Believe it or not, it's actually wider than the original Linn Mark 1, just by a couple of millimeters. The bonus of this one, of course, is it has crash and ride, so let's have a quick listen to that one. At the same time, Tom Oberheim, who'd been using, basically creating a lot of synthesizers around about the 1979-1980, he turned his attention to drum machines as well, and he brought out the Oberheim Dmx. This one here is a particular MIDI version. Let's have a listen to that one. And this one's got basically sound cards, which we'll have a look at in a second. They're different sound cards to the original DMX that came out. Just going back in time again, Roland brought out the TR series, starting with the TR-808. Around about 1980, pre-MIDI days. And then, according to history, they reckon it was a flop, but it still sold many units and it was used on many records at the time. Soon followed by the TR-909. And then a cheaper version known as the 707. Unfortunately, it was all plastic casing and the power supply was on the outside. At the same time as the 808, they brought out the TR-606. This is a modified version here with a custom paint job, used by a flock of seagulls and various other people at the time. Very cheap unit compared to the 808, very popular. The Roland TR series. All of which, coming up to the modern day, you can pretty much get in one of these. The Roland TR8 and also the TR8S, which has just come out. This particular TR8 also has the sounds of the 707, 727 and 606. So instead of spending thousands of dollars on this TR series here, you can just buy one of these. Various other drum devices came out at the time in the early 80s. Very rare unit here, Alan Heath Impulse 1. Just before that came out, a company called MPC brought out this unit here, which could program drum patterns as well as actually play them using these pads. And it could also be linked up to a computer, a Sinclair computer. Before they brought this out, they brought out two versions of this, the kit, which isn't really a drum machine, but it has pads that allow you to play it like drums, and also it's got basically pre-recorded sequences of cymbals, so you can play along to those and record them. This is the second version. There was a white version, which was more limited. Very few models were sold of that, and it was completely redesigned. Even Simmons turned their attention to this Porter kit here, which could actually store sequences. All of these can be found in these books here, so all the drum machines, this series of drum machine books called Rhythm Machines. And also Drum Facts, which is the same book essentially but black and white. The Rhythm Machines books are all colour pages. Let's go forward and have a look at all these drum machines here. So early 80s, Boss DR55. Korg were a bit slow coming out with the programmable unit, so they brought out a second KR55, which was all preset, while they were basically coming up with this one here. This is pre-MIDI, KPR77, quite complicated to program, but that was just basically waiting in the wings until they actually brought out something better. The sequential tom. And the sequential drum tracks, which came before that, which is basically built in Japan. Let's have a quick look inside and see what they got inside. All these chips here, these chips could be replaced, just like on the Linn drums. And several companies use this kind of chip technology. At the back here, the MXR185, again very similar, had chips that could be taken out. The MXR185 was a relative flop, didn't have MIDI, and there was a later version planned, but unfortunately MXR went out of business. Still a very good drum unit. And of course this is the early DMX, the pre-MIDI DMX. We'll have a look inside this one. Good thing about these is they all fold back with the hinges. As you can see, they've got a load of cards inside. And these cards could be available as additional purchases, quite expensive. Here's a voice card here. Oberheim soon followed up with a replacement, slightly cheaper version, called the DX. Essentially the same sounds, but it was cheaper. As you can see, a smaller display on it. This was soon followed by the DXA, which is a MIDI version of it. You can't tell it's a DXA apart from basically a giveaway here. You've got smaller buttons, and you've also got this writing up in the corner here for all the MIDI, and of course the MIDI sockets on the back. At the back here, the EMU drumulator from EMU, and there's a company called DigiDrums realised you could swap all the chips, so they brought out swappable chips and did very well out of it. They also provided these not just for the Simmons, also the sequential drum tracks, and it was a very successful little business for them. The French brought out this, the Rsf Dd 30. Only about 300 of these were ever manufactured. Quite a solid casing, metal casing, and like a membrane type controls here. Very rare unit indeed. And this is the Attack of the Clones, so these are all Boss DR55 clones that came out in the early 80s. This one here from the company, the Movement Company, which brought out the Movement drum computer, which features in the book Rhythm Machines 2. There was an early version of the Movement in wood, used by people like the Eurythmics, the Thompson Twins, and a later version in orange, used by Kachagugu, the Thompson Twins again, also the Eurythmics. He had a black version, which Vince Clarke of Depeche Mode later picked up. Here's another clone of the DR55, the K, and this is the last K drum machine. They brought out quite a few preset ones. This is their only programmable. Nice little unit. A company called Soundmaster produced the SR88 and also a little Latin one called the LP88. And this was basically Soundmaster again, EDC, who'd actually made a couple of preset models for other companies in the late 70s. And this is the SR99. And Soundmaster's last product, Soundmaster Sticks, which again was slightly advanced on their SR88 model. We now turn our attentions to sampling. People wanted to sample their own sounds. The Roger Linn's third model, the Linn 900. Revolutionary when it came out. Very good pads here for playing. Unfortunately, the software at the time caused sequences to lock up, and he received many complaints. Unfortunately, that was the end of the Linn company. Subsequently bought by Bruce Foret, who released a better version of this, the Foret F9000. And all the software bugs were removed, and he made a few hundred of those models for several years, and he's basically the expert on the Linn 9000. If you get software 7, that should correct all the errors on the Linn 9000. Only around 1100 or 1200 of those units were actually made. Emu, who had brought out the emulator sampling keyboard, brought out sampling drum machine, initially called the Drumulator 2, became the SP12, and that was subsequently followed by the SP1200, which is an improved version. Here's a rare one here, a company called Insonic, brought out the Percussion. This is just a prototype, it was never actually released. Very basic, similar programming to the TR, Roland TR series. This was never produced, there's probably only a couple of these in the world, one of which I have here. Back to the sampling again, the French released the SD140 sampling drum unit. Again, only a couple of hundred of these were manufactured before RSF, who'd been in partnership with the company Aria, eventually folded. Talking to sampling, British company around about 1982 came up with the sampling concept. Took a couple of years to develop. This is the Anvil percussion synth. This is the only one in the world. And this again is in the book Rhythm Machines 2. You'll find out the whole story of the Anvil. And sadly it just never went into production. Took a couple of years to develop, cost a lot of money, and still just wasn't quite ready. And ultimately never produced. So only one was ever made, and here it is. The British were quite advanced for the time. Here's a clef band box and the clef master rhythm. The master rhythm is essentially very similar to the DR55. It's actually a pretty good unit if you come across one. You can either use it here as a standalone or put it in here with the actual computer band box, which also has bass, programmable bass capability. The main issue with these sort of drum units is the batteries on them. They tend to leak after a while, and unfortunately this band box is no longer working because it's got battery damage. Very few band boxes were manufactured over a couple of years span. And down here is another Linn 9000. Let's have a look inside and see what we got here. It's a very similar system to the Oberheim with these cards. There is also a slot for an additional sample card. So the sample card initially didn't come out when the Linn 9000 came out. It wasn't ready for about a year, and then eventually it came out, by which time the Linn company was in real trouble, and lots of people were very unhappy. A lot of people who paid quite a lot of money for these units, and unfortunately that was the demise of Linn, who of course resurrected by forming with Ikai, who had more finances, and he produced a very brilliant Ikai MPC 60 based on technology that he'd obviously come across when he did the Linn 9000. So it wasn't all lost. If it had been working when it came out, it would have been brilliant. Let's have a look at some more units. So here's some more British ones. A Cheetah, a company called Cheetah, the MD8. This is an early model here, so with the black one here, and the later model was a grey one. Very few black ones are actually produced. The main difference here, apart from the colour, is it's actually got an on-off switch. To save money, the initial units didn't actually have an on-off switch, and it was loaded by tape, which was quite cumbersome and didn't always work. Unfortunately, it's very cheap tape when they brought the unit out, so a lot of people had real trouble trying to get the thing to load. Back to the Russians again. So they basically stole off Yamaha and came out with this unit, which looks very similar to a Yamaha, apart from it's all in Russian. This is the DR9, again a very rare unit, and very few of these are still around, very few of them still work. Rhythm Machines features a chapter on computers and computer software. A company called Greengate brought out a sampler for a couple of guys who were in a band called Mainframe, and they had a near hit in the UK with a song called 5 Minutes. They actually had the company Greengate and brought out this kind of sampling drum device which they use on their records, and some other people bought. There was some others at the time. This is the PVI drum key in this box. PVI basically became the Nsonic company, and this was for the Apple II computer, and it sounds essentially similar to that Percussion that we saw earlier, that prototype. So they did use some of the technology for the Percussion for the drum machine, but they obviously abandoned it. And there were other software things that came out as well. So the Spectrum at the back here, again made by Cheetah, which was the first product. So the guys who came up with the Spectrum, just a couple of unemployed musicians, they subsequently brought out the Cheetah MD8. And there were others at the time as well, like this company here. the micro rhythm for the Commodore 64, Digidrum 2, and an advanced micro rhythm. And of course we've got here the software made by Sequential for the Commodore, the Model 64 sequencer. Also a company called Tron brought out the Digidrum. Everyone seems to call everything Digidrum. Did they actually realise that there were several Digidrum products at the time? And again, that was for the Commodore 64. Here's the interface here for the cheaters, and there's a couple of tapes. There's 3 tapes that came out. It's electronic, Latin, and over here, that's the Afro kit. Cheater subsequently brought out the MD16. Here's one here, and also the MD16R, which is a rack version, which is pretty solid metal, very cheap looking plastic cheater MD16. And what you could do with these was actually use them for an electronic kit with the cheater pad interface here. There was also a pad interface made for the cheater MD8 model. And there you have it. So all this information is freely available for a small fee of around $30. Rhythm Machines 2. Have a quick look inside. So it's all colour, packed with information on all these drum units. If you don't have much money, pretty much the same book, apart from the computer chapter is in Drum Facts 2, which is in black and white. It's all black and white photographs. Rhythm Machines 3 covers off the 90s units like the MD16 and the Boss DR770, and that is also Drum Facts 3, again in black and white. So Rhythm Machines 3 is in colour and Drum Facts 3 is in black and white. And if you want to know about the early preset units, the book that came out around about 2 years ago, Rhythm Machines, The Rise and Fall of the Presets. All of these are by Alex Graham. They're all available on Amazon. Rhythm Machines all in colour. The Drum Facts series are in black and white.